Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about The Handmaid's Tale Season 5 Episode 1. The episode is called Morning, and full spoilers from the start of this review. So back with a new season, watching this one episode a week. This is the final season, I believe, and there was a nice sort of meaty catch up at the start of the episode. So it follows on the next day after Fred has been brutally and savagely killed by the rebels, led by, of course, June. She's like key involvement there. So it's the fallout, and I guess it's called Morning for two reasons. One, because it's the morning after, and two, because it's about mourning in a way and how these two women kind of mourn in different ways, like talking about June and then Serena as she finds out the news about her husband. Now, it's a weird word to use, mourning, for like June, because she's obviously killed one of her arch enemies and a man who has put her through so much trauma and stress and grief, or all the rest of it, as was made her life a living hell. But you know, I guess in a sense, she's mourning deep inside just because of, what she did, how extreme she went, and how savage it was, all the rest of it. But for a lot of the episode, it feels like classic June of recent seasons, at least, where she's like keeping it bottled inside. She's very, very malicious about the whole thing and kind of cold towards Luke and towards Moira, because she comes back the next day and she's like covered in blood. She's in the bathroom. They obviously see her come out in blood. They're saying, whose blood is this? And they're frantically trying to get her attention, trying to talk to her, and they're just mortified when they find out whose blood it is and that it's still on June. Because Moira in particular, I think, can see what a savage death it was, and how June probably went over the line, although on some levels you can understand it, but how she almost went too far and took things into her own hands in such a savage way. But so the reactions from Moira and Luke feel very authentic, and they're concerned, particularly Moira, because later on there's a thing with Luke where he really seems to understand. Like, he gets it, and he actually doesn't feel that bad for what June did. He says he understands it. That son of a bitch had it coming. Now, whether he actually means that, I'm not sure, but obviously a lot of emotions for him, a lot of rage because of what his wife was put through. So we start the final season in a very like murky place. Personally, I thought season 4 was a good season overall. It sort of brought things back around after a very like lackluster third season. And I think I said on those reviews then the show, it's never really going to recapture its former glory. You're probably still going to have like the odd scene and certain things that really elevate it. Top class performances for one. The use of music is still very poetic and effective, but generally speaking, you're going to have some bumps, and it's never going to be as great as it was in those first couple of seasons. But I did feel it sort of settled down in season 4 into a different kind of, I don't know, sort of era for The Handmaid's Tale, where it settled down into something a little bit different and just felt a little bit more focused, and how maybe you could enjoy it for some of the things it did with like certain characters without being totally as engrossed in it as you once were. I think that's kind of where it settled down in season 4. So, but once again, going into another season, it's like, what else can they do? What new direction can they take it? And is it just going to feel like ground already trodden? And at times in this episode, it did feel a bit like that. I think once again, it feels a bit too almost revenge style porn with some of the direction they've gone in with June, and I just sort of wish they weren't quite so in your face with some of the stuff. And it's something I felt last season where it almost felt like they made June into too much of a villain style character. And another thought I had is then they should have maybe dialed June's role back last season. Like, probably someone else could be made the main character and like elevated, run with it. Obviously that was never going to happen, especially with Elizabeth Moss having such control, so much power as she does as a producer on the show and the star. And I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, because she is such a great actress and this is such a powerful role for her, but for the sake of keeping things fresh, it might have been a good choice to have dialed down her role and balanced it out a little bit, given someone else a bit more of like a bigger role. But so some of those concerns are here in this episode, where some of it is a little too in your face, and at times, yeah, they just go a bit far with June, with her like getting off on this stuff, being very like malicious and vicious. Because you have to remember, no matter what she was put through in the past and all this, and the theme of the show in those early seasons, which is why this whole revenge thing and how far they pushed it does make a lot of sense. At the same time, she is essentially a good character. She's meant to be like sympathetic and stuff. And as someone else says later in the show, there are laws for this sort of thing. This is like the job of law enforcement. But so there's some good fallout to it, but you get like, once again, almost like an ironic use of music, because it cuts between her and Serena. So Serena, as she finds out about Fred's death the next day, because she's moved to a new facility. But, well, first of all, you get June remembering the previous night's event. So you get the use of like Dream, 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 that old pop number. And that's used as she's like memorising what exactly went down. So it's cutting between the two, this sort of powerful, ironic style cut. And then, as I said, we get the contrast with her and Serena, where Serena is moved to a new facility for her own good, her own safety, like. And then someone comes along and actually tells her what happens, and you get some good stuff with Serena in this. I actually think some of the better stuff is with Serena than with June, as we see Serena mourning and coming to terms with what happened to Fred, and she gets flashes, and also her anger and desperation. It sells, the actress sells really well how disturbed and afraid she is of what June might do, because if she did that to her husband, there's nothing to say she wouldn't do it to Serena as well. Because this episode definitely sells what a loose cannon and maybe how unstable June is, because Moya has that issue later in the episode where she's like uncomfortable with June being around Nicole, being around her daughter. So because she wants to bath her, but like Moira's like, I'm not comfortable with that. So Moira definitely takes it, a lot harder, and is much more disturbed, it seems, than Luke, who seems like more supportive of what happened. But there's some good stuff with Serena, as I was saying. The stuff where the Canadian guy comes along and he tells her what happened, and that there was a deal made between Canada and Gilead where the prisoners were exchanged for Fred, and like in theory it was to imprison him, but that's sort of where the incident happened, and Serena is just outraged and pissed at this because she's like, you knew full well what was going to happen, you knew what was in store, and I like the touch of her knowing that it was June from the thing with the finger being sent through the post, and it was like the finger of the wedding ring. The wedding ring's on. So from that statement, she knew who it was. She knew it was June. So that was a good touch. But the Serena stuff, I do think, is stronger than the June stuff in this episode. I also like the scene later. Well, there's more stuff because she's saying things to the Canadian guy like, "You really don't know what she's capable of. You're being naive, or you're kidding me if you think you can actually protect me." And then the stuff where she goes outside and there's all these people, and it's sort of like a vigil for her husband maybe, and they're all giving her the support, and we almost get classic Serena Joy where she goes back into machine-like mode and very sort of dominating. Because when she says, I demand my husband's body I take it back with me to Gilead so he can have a proper burial. And she uses some powerful statement, like she's saying things like the Warnerford name has a lot of status, of things like that, and she says any self-respecting country would do this, as like a pot shot to the guy. And it's this beautiful turnaround because in the scenes leading up to this, she has been very overwhelmed and is in a lot of shock and sort of bows down more to like the authority, like the scene where she was being transferred. But then she suddenly turns the tables and takes control, and the Canadian guys say, yeah, I'm sure it could be arranged, but some of Serena's reactions are like fantastic. Like there's another good touch of how June gets away with it, like or isn't prosecuted, and we see that from Serena's end, her finding out, and the reason is because June, the killing took place on a bit of land which was in between Canada and Gilead, and it was in a space where the government, the authorities had no control, so that's why they couldn't actually prosecute June. Although they do say there might be some charges, but at some point, because what happens is eventually June cracks. You find out that she is like keeping all this stuff inside. So she eventually like breaks down and like at some point washes the blood in the sea because she's still in shock and has the blood on her. So then at some point she goes to the authorities and she tries to turn herself in, but there's that loophole where even if they do believe her, that they can't prosecute it because of that technicality. So that gets back to Joy, which obviously enrages her even more. Sorry, I'm getting June and Joy to Serena. It's Serena Joy, that's where I'm getting the confusion. But so they seem to be building to a Serena versus June standoff this season. That seems to be the big storyline that they're setting in motion. Obviously, like we expect June to be going back to Gilead one last time to try and get Hannah back finally, which makes sense for it being the last season. But obviously a feud between those two could be good because it's sort of like history coming around because they were so closely linked in the early seasons. But it sort of leaves you in a bit of a murky place just because June at the moment isn't that likable. And although Serena, she's a frustrating character because she's lying to herself in many ways about who her husband is and or was and things like that. At the same time, in this episode, at times you do feel a bit more sympathetic towards her, weirdly. But obviously there could be some good stuff coming out of that, like a June versus Serena like standoff and battle if they really do it well. So there's one scene I really didn't like when it comes to like some of this cutting between stuff and contrast stuff, because June goes to a diner and she sits down, and I think once again there's some, oh yeah, it's like this really upbeat country music song starts playing and she's enjoying herself, like eating like a breakfast type thing, like cooked breakfast. And I think it was, I don't know if it was cutting between something else, like again maybe memories from the night before, or maybe the stuff with Serena, but I think it might have just been her eating breakfast and then you had this country music song playing and you just cut to her really enjoying her breakfast and like smiling quite sinisterly. And that bit I wasn't too keen on. It felt a bit clunky and on the nose the way they were using the music. But she's there to meet like some of the other rebels, and she's upset that Emily isn't there because she expected Emily to be there. But she gets herself a gun from one of the rebels, and things take a turn fast in this scene because they want to go back to like Gilead, and they're saying, we helped you out, June, we helped you take down Fred, so now let us get revenge. And they're really pissed when she doesn't want to do it, where once again this is another example of I think the show making June a bit too unlikable, because in this scene she comes off as very cold and very quite arrogant in a way, because she's almost laughing off their suggestions and saying, you know, you'll never get to that post, you'll never get to where you were posted, and things like that. And it's not like she's wrong, and it's not like they should go back, but at the same time it is a little self-centered, the fact that she got to get her revenge on Fred and use them for that in a way, although she might not have seen it as that at the time, but she used them for that purpose, and now that they want to do the same, like, she's sort of laughing it off. So June doesn't come off great in that scene. But anyway, I think another problem is that it, as I said, it does escalate quite fast between her and the other rebels. That felt a little bit forced. And that's another thing, maybe a couple of things seem a bit forced in the episode, like how June comes around by the end of the episode a bit too easily, for me at least. One of the best scenes in the episode, which I really liked, which is a much more like subtle, quieter scene, but it's when June goes to see Emily's girlfriend and she finds out that Emily has gone back to Gilead. She wants to find Aunt Lydia. And like Emily's girlfriend is like, well, you can see she's like down and upset, but she's like keeping it together and she's putting things in perspective. June's, because at one point June says it's my fault, and Emily's girlfriend, played by Claire Deville, says, so what? I mean, yeah, and she has a really good line about what good is it gonna do? Is it just a thing where I know how to hate the most? So she very much has a positive attitude where she's like, there's no point going down that road. I might as well just move on with my life. And she really does have perspective in the scene, because she says something like, "I'm just happy for the time, the amount of time I got to spend with Emily." So it's almost like one day she did expect her to return to Gilead, and she's resigned to not seeing again, maybe because she thinks it is a bit of a doomed mission or whatever. But yeah, like, it's a good scene and she comes off well in it, and I like her saying to June, "Yeah, I won't tell you if she comes around again," because it's that thing of she wants a complete break. She wants a fresh start to her life, which you can't blame her. And it's a good scene to have too, because it is a contrast with June, who has had her life now bogged down by this stuff. And it's obviously different because this other girl, this other character, it wasn't in the meat of things in Gilead like June was, or Emily, but she's obviously suffered a great deal because of being separated from Emily and what Emily has been through. But it's a good scene for that reason as well, because this is almost like the opposite of June, where June has been so consumed by this stuff that she just can't let go. But so I did like that scene as well. So not a bad first episode back. It was a bit hit and miss for me, I have to say. So some of the old problems from the recent seasons, at least, rearing their ugly heads once again. Some of the stuff with June being like some of the main problems for me, but it had its moments, and it might just be a little bit of a iffy, like clunky first episode just to set things up, and then once you get the direction for the season, things might go a bit smoother. We'll have to see. It's going to be an interesting final season. So that's Handmaid's Tale, the premiere of season 5, the final season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe. As always, share me out on social media. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon.